Welcome to Casual Conversations. My name is Aaron. I'm with CrossCountry Mortgage, and I'm here today with Cody Harding from Goosehead Insurance. And this is a casual conversation about insurance. We're going to cover a lot today, a lot of different topics, and we hope it's really informational for you. One of the questions I have, Cody, as we're talking about insurance and we get into this is, what are the benefits of insurance?
One of the benefits where I feel like, let's start off where obviously most people don't necessarily like paying insurance, but it is good in the instance when you need to use it. So the benefits of insurance is pretty much, protecting your assets. And one of the major ones that most people, their biggest asset is their home and then automobiles. But you're also deferring the risk onto somebody else. Okay. So most people can't absorb a huge, loss on their asset, and then that's where insurance comes in and, takes over and makes sure that people are in a good situation and they, don't take a huge loss.
Okay. So, and you mentioned a couple different types of insurance. What are some important types of insurance?
The big ones, homeowners insurance, auto insurance, and then I believe every homeowner should have an umbrella policy too. So,
okay,
those are the three big ones that pretty much that will apply to everybody.
So if we talk about homeowners insurance, what are some important features, some important things to look at, some important things to talk to your insurance agent about as it relates to your homeowners insurance?
Good question. So insurance is, very customizable. So there's a lot of aspects with insurance that, that will affect your insurance rates, coverages, of course. So certain things that you want to ask your realtor, perhaps, is, if you're buying a new home, is, the age of the roof, because that's super important with different types of insurance companies, whether the age of the roof, because that'll affect your rate. Also, if it has certain things like a pool, or if personal things, be like, hey, if I plan on putting a trampoline on here, all those are underwriting risks, and then especially, with pets too. And even now with, I see it more and more, depending on where you're located at, that clients will have chickens and stuff on their property. That's like the new thing.
Yeah.
So there's
hobby farm type.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So typical insurance will not cover that. You have to have incidental farm coverages. So it's like, all these different aspects that you need to have covered on your homeowner's policy that will affect your rates. And that's where it takes a good licensed agent to come in and just, kind of find a little bit about you, what you plan on doing, and then they can build a solid policy for you and make sure that you're covered. And, it's super important to make sure you have all those different coverages. So also another one going on too would be, wood burning stoves, types of pipes for plumbing, electrical issues, stuff like that.
And those all have an impact on not only your policy, but the premium that you're going to pay.
Correct. Yeah, because insurance companies, they weight risks certain ways, and so and they've been doing it for some of them 100 years or more, and they know exactly the type of risk that will happen more often than others. So they charge a little bit differently for them.
Okay, so
yeah.
if I'm buying a home today and I come to you, what are the questions that you're going to ask me about the home so that I know I'm getting the proper coverage?
Absolutely. So standard stuff would be, age of the home, year of the roof, type of roof, square footage, basement type, percentage basement that's finished. If you have, type, how many bathrooms, bedrooms, build materials, quality of build, all that will go into the, it'll affect the dwelling coverages, and then incidentally they'll go on down the line through other coverages too that I can go deep into if you want. But
well, as much as you want to share.
Yeah.
I think it's great information for our audience to actually know this and be able to proactively get that information to their insurance agent.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. It will take a conversation with an agent to issue, bind, and build a good policy. Other than that, if you want just a standard preliminary quote, you could do it, but it doesn't necessarily say that, hey, this is the right policy, because there's going to be a lot of personal questions that the agent has to ask that insured client. Kind of what they plan on doing with the home after that. So if you just throw out a quote, it most likely will not have the proper coverages. It'll be like a good estimate, but there's still underwriting questions and eligibility that will go into all that.
So assume, for the sake of it, I'm not doing new construction and the whole power just went out.
Casual conversations in the dark.
That is fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
That is
We got to keep rolling. I got this.
That is fantastic. All right, there we go. Spooky stories with Cody Harding. Spooky insurance stories.
So I wonder if that's covered. That went out.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Wow. Oh, hey everyone. Actually, what just happened right in the middle of that conversation was the power went out. So we're starting over again and just going to pick up our conversation from here. We were talking about some of the important things that an insurance agent should know about the home that you're buying and the questions that they would actually ask you. And so one of the questions that I actually had, Cody, was if they're going to, if I'm a first-time home buyer, it's one thing that I don't know all of the information you're asking.
Absolutely.
If I have new construction, I might know because I'm there. But if I'm buying a house from 1960, let's say, or 1970, I won't know a lot of those questions. Where's a place that I can go to actually get that information if my agent doesn't know, or what's the best way to get that information to you?
Well, it's hard because you're not going to necessarily know or who to reach out to. So for me, what I do personally is I'll reach out to the actual listing agent and ask them, like, hey, what's this, and be proactive about it, because you're right. I'm the professional. I should be doing that as a courtesy service for people. And that's typically what I'll tell my clients, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to reach out and take care of that for you. Because you're right. Most people don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of their home. And that's where the person who you're buying the home from and their listing agent will know those questions. So that's where we get those resources from.
Okay. And so if I am buying a new home, when is the time that I should be getting an insurance quote? When should I get my coverage bound?
Yeah.
What's the steps that I should take for that?
So right after, so I like to be involved immediately. So right when you get a purchase agreement signed and submitted, so get the insurance involved immediately. So that way there's adequate time. So that way insurance is never going to hold up a closing because things change, And when you have the purchase agreement, get the insurance involved. Start shopping around for insurance. Sorry, bug everywhere. But and if you have an escrow, your insurance is going to be within your escrow, so there's not going to be any money exchanged for the actual policy itself. So let's say something happens after the appraisal or whatever happens, since there's no money exchange, cancel the policy, move on to the next. It's just there's no reason why you have to wait for after like appraisal, all that stuff. Just get it in because the sooner you get the insurance taken care of, the better.
Okay. Now you mentioned other types of insurance. So we've got homeowners. How about auto? Are there some important features of auto that the audience should know about?
Absolutely. So when you're looking at your home insurance, you want to look at the whole portfolio. So whatever you have, home, auto, if you have a RV, whatever, let's take a look at it because you get definitely discounts from that. So let's take a look at that. But also with the auto too, again, as with insurance, as I mentioned earlier, is very customizable. So you want to make sure that you have adequate coverages for liability as well in your autos, especially if you have kids too, that you have that because let's say you or at fault accident and you happen to injure somebody and they come after you, you don't have the proper coverages, they're going to do an asset check to make sure that if you have any kind of way that they can get money out of you, start getting litigation attorneys involved, they're going to get creative for it.
And you're bringing up something to go back to the homeowners.
Yeah.
Assume for the sake of it that I'm an investor.
Yeah.
And I have multiple different properties. You talked about doing an asset check.
Right.
Being held in an LLC, being held solely as my own property, things like that. Does that have an impact on insurance?
Absolutely. And I'm not an attorney for kind of how it will affect like LLCs and what they can go after and stuff. However, I'm always erring on the side of caution. They'll have a little bit more insurance, but it's not going to cost you an arm or leg than have underinsured. So it's because a lot of people, and I'm hoping that a lot of agents out there are educating their clients and going through their policies with them and listening and building a solid policy. But unfortunately, there's a lot of agents in my field that just want to sell the policy as cheaply and as quick as possible, then move on to the next. And that's not doing a good service to the client. So you want to make sure that, because a lot of people, the lowest policy isn't always the best policy. It's most people want to have the most for their money, and that's where it all comes down to. And that's what I do.
So what are some good questions that a client should then ask an real estate agent when they're buying that home?
So things to ask when they're buying that home is, again, we'll say age of the roof. That's a big one. Pools. Does it have a diving board? How tall is the diving board? They look at all this stuff. How deep is the area beneath the diving board? If it has a fire, wood burning stoves. That's another big one too that will impact the insurance rates. And again, if you have pets, I'm a believer. As most people say, like, hey, I don't care if you have a vicious breed, but insurance companies, they look at it differently. So if you have Rottweilers, pit bulls, stuff like that, we all know it's how you raise them, but nonetheless, insurance, they want to know that kind of things, and they'll do a different premium for it. If you don't disclose something to insurance, and anything happens, and they look into it, I'm not saying they are, but they have an out sometimes. So it's always good to disclose everything through insurance.
Okay. So we talked about homeowners, we talked about a little bit about auto. You mentioned umbrella policy.
Yeah.
What's important about an umbrella policy, and what should I be looking for in that?
So I've got a personal experience. So umbrella policy adds an extra layer of liability coverage to whatever you have, that's why I call it umbrella, because it goes over your home, auto, boats if you have them, snowmobiles even. But what it does is it insulates you from risk. So if you're found at fault and injure somebody for some reason, you're negligible, it's the most amount of insurance you get for the least amount of money. So the umbrella policies go from $1 million extra added coverage, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, as much as you want and how much you want to be protected. So a little story is my mom down in Florida and my brother was on the property with a friend at my mom's house, and they tipped over a side-by-side, and it rolled over and it broke the neighbor's hand. They went to the hospital, the kid's hand was messed up. His health insurance sued my mom's homeowners insurance, and luckily she had an umbrella policy because they went above the $500,000, and that's what those types of issues happen.
So under an umbrella policy, though, is there something that isn't covered under umbrella?
Well, if you do something intentional.
Well, let me give an example. So if I'm going to build a new home and I am putting in a foundation inside this property, the risk of somebody coming in and let's just say there's a kids playing in the yard and they fall and hurt themselves on my property.
Right.
Is it important for me to actually have insurance coverage if I'm doing new construction even before the house is complete? And who's at risk, and would an umbrella policy cover me, or should I have a separate type of insurance for that?
Usually the builder would have the policy because you have to take ownership necessarily of, you have the property, of course, but then when you start getting like builders involved, so is it the builder's fault because they're building and they didn't put proper protections in place? Now for me, again, I always err on the side of caution to get the umbrella policy. It's super cheap. That way you're not just, in the court system figuring out, and stressing for months how much you're going to have to pay out and whatever. So it's just a good idea to have that, whether it's your fault or not or whatever. Just get it for cheap.
So I do know that there are some builders though that put the actual property, or they deed the property over to the buyer before, and then they are granting them a right of easement or a right to go ahead and build the property on top. So now I actually own the property,
right?
And the builder won't cover that. So it is important. Is that still covered under umbrella, or is that covered under?
You would have a builder's risk policy
okay.
at that point, and then you can have an umbrella on top of that.
Okay.
So yeah,
and that's something that is pretty easily put together.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. Super easy.
Okay. So next, when we're talking about insurance as a whole, though, is insurance customizable? What are ways that I can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Very customizable. So we can get it super deep in it, but the majority of homeowners policies are written on what's called an HO3 policy. It's an open peril. And you have certain basic coverages in there. Now there's hidden coverages that a lot of insurance agents don't even talk about. But I always include them in there because they're super important. So they're called endorsements. So let's just say you have a sump pump and the sump pump stops working, and all of a sudden you have water backup coming up. On a typical homeowner's policy, that's not covered. So you get thousands of dollars of damage in your home, and if you don't have the endorsements for sewer and water backup coverage, you're at risk. And I've had it happen to friends, and it's not a good situation. And also too, back in the day, when they built the homes, for the sewer lines, they had cast iron pipes. Now we all know what happens to iron; it rusts out, so they have rusting issues. a normal homeowner's policy wouldn't cover that type of damage to the sewer line that connects from your home to the property line. There's an endorsement on there called sewer line coverage on there. So that's super important to have on there too, because that can get super pricey to make that repair. So it's better to have the insurance paying for it than you, right?
Absolutely. So if you're talking about customizable, what are some things that would actually impact the rate that I'm paying or the premium that I'm paying?
So again, it would be, deductibles too. You can customize your deductibles. You can also, like I said, add those endorsements on there, and that's all, specific for each individual client or insured. Now, that's where it takes an agent to listen and kind of build a policy for that. And one other thing too, like deductibles, I'll do stuff like if I know a client has an older roof, I'll make sure that their deductibles are low, because the chances of that roof maybe getting more damage or something happening from wind and hail are greater. So I want to make sure that the client's not paying out of pocket if they do have roof issues, because some insurance companies will have your deductible on a percentage basis, so you could be paying out $5,000, $6,000 out for insurance even before insurance kicks in. So why even have insurance if you're basically self-insuring yourself?
So in a lot of ways, not only is it customizable, there's various factors that impact a lot of this.
Yeah.
So it's really the best to talk to an insurance agent and figure out all the details, all the policy, all the different risks involved, and get that over.
Absolutely. One thing I want to talk about too is I always get a lot of questions that say, hey, my coverage on my home is $400,000. I spent $500,000 for the home. They're two different things. So
and you're talking about replacement value.
Right, the replacement value on it. And what insurance cares about is insuring the dwelling. So they were going to replace, or they're going to insure the home for whatever it takes to pay someone for today's labor and materials. And that's where they come up with that replacement cost, rebuild cost, reconstruction cost, whatever you want to call it, RCE. And it's completely different from market value or the loan, because insurance doesn't cover the land, doesn't cover the loan amount, but it just makes sure that you're going to become whole again after a catastrophic loss. So that's where it comes from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're an insurance broker.
Correct.
And so can you talk a little bit about what's the difference between an insurance broker and, let's say, the end insurance company?
Right. So insurance broker means I have access to multiple different companies. So I can shop around and make sure that we're getting the best of both worlds. So the best coverages and the best rates. And I have multiple different options. So it's called the choice model, because we can place you with one insurance company for the home and place for another for an auto, because about 50% of the time it makes sense to have an insured with the home and auto, and 50% of the time it doesn't make sense. It makes go home with another company and an auto for another one.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, great. I guess the last question then, as I'm going to kind of go through this, is of the obvious, but what's the risk of not having insurance?
Yeah. So imagine if you don't have insurance, and let's just say you have your home paid off and you don't want to have insurance, but actually billed. All of a sudden, what's going to happen? The power goes out and the house burns down. Something happens.
Yeah.
You're going to lose a big asset, and you're going to be taking all the brunt of it on your shoulders. So insurance is definitely putting the risk onto somebody else, paying them for taking that risk on, and that way you're insulated against any kind of loss, because something like that could be catastrophic for most people. Where you let's say again, you're found liable for someone getting hurt in your property. You only have, let's say, $100,000 of coverage, but that's it. Next thing you know, you're on the hook for an additional $600,000. Where's it going to come from? Future wage garnishments, potentially.
Yeah.
So that's where insurance comes in. Even though everyone kind of hates paying it, I get it. So
yeah, everyone kind of looks at it as a necessary evil.
Yeah.
And so, but the coverage is good, the information is good. Is there anything else that you want to share, just about insurance in general, or?
Always take a look at, your coverages. And if you have, for your, the audience here, if they want to reach out to me and just say, hey, can you consult me a little bit and just kind of take a look at what I have to make sure that everything's good, I'm more than happy to do that.
So you'll offer that as a free service?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no high pressure sales. I got a lot of business coming in, so I'm not desperate for anything. I more or less just want to help out people, just make sure that, they're in a good spot. So if you have questions about your insurance, or say, hey, can you take a look and just kind of guide me and advise me or educate me on something, reach out. I'm more than happy to do that.
Fantastic. Well, we hope you've actually found this information helpful, and we appreciate Cody being here with us and
Thank you.
talking through
Yeah.
some things. And we look forward to our next video and talking to you soon. Thanks.